This is the BYD Shark 6. It's Australia's first electric plug-in hybrid ute. And it's massive news for a number of reasons, and I'll get to those very shortly in this video. But the Shark 6 now faces stiff competition from plug-in electric versions of the Ford Ranger and the GWM Can-Am Alpha. So is the Shark a mere novelty, or is it a clear sign of things to come? And more importantly, how does it go off-road? Well, as always, that's what we're here to find out, so stick around. The BYD Shark 6 is a 5-seat dual cab ute, and it's available in one grade only in Australia, the Premium, and it has a price tag of $57,990, but that's excluding on-road costs. The standard features list for the Shark is comprehensive, but I'll stick to the more notable features. One of those is this 15.6-inch touchscreen multimedia system, and that has wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. There's also a 10.25-inch driver digital display. And between those two screens, you can pretty much operate everything inside the cabin, including vehicle assist programs and for passenger comfort. There's wireless charging on the center console, and you also have a 360-degree camera and a tire pressure monitoring system. Exterior paint choices include great white, tidal black, deep sea blue and outback orange. For even more details, make sure you read my full written review at carsguide.com.au. In terms of design, the BYD Shark 6 is pretty easy on the eye. From that big bluff front end past those distinctive wheel arches, you've got 18-inch alloys, chunky side steps. It's a good looking ute. The Shark's cabin is a very practical space, but it also has a fair amount of prestige about it in terms of look and feel. There are plenty of soft touch surfaces inside. It's very comfortable, driver and front seat passenger, well looked after, plenty of charge points, plenty of storage areas. And in the back seat, the storage is pretty much the same. You get a surprising amount of room, and it is very comfortable. All in all, the Shark's cabin is a very impressive space. Any ute is only as good as its tray, and the good news about the Shark's tray is that it is pretty impressive. That tub liner looks pretty sturdy. There are 6 tight end points in the tub area. There's also a light, and you'll be the legend of your campsite because you can pretty much power everyone's fridge and whatever else you have there, your massive beat box, via those plug points in the tub area. So all round, pretty well set up. Forget everything you know about ute engines because BYD has thrown all of that out of the window. The Shark has a 1.5 litre turbocharged petrol engine, and it also has an electric motor at the front and at the rear, and on board it has a 30 kilowatt hour battery pack. Now, maximum total outputs for the Shark are 321 kilowatts and 650 Newton meters. This works off a single speed reduction gear transmission, an all-wheel drive system. It has drive modes, eco, normal and sport. It has terrain modes, mountain, sand, mud and snow. And all round, this is just a really impressive setup. On road, the BYD Shark is very impressive, and I realise I've said impressive a lot in this video, but it really is. It's settled, it's composed, probably partly to do with being such a heavy vehicle with that battery on board, but also just a real nice ride quality about it, and that's something to do with the suspension. It's not spine-jarringly firm. It's got a nice composure about it on road, and that's great. Off-road, it's a slightly different story. Over anything more than light to moderate lumps and bumps and shallow ruts on a bush track, the Shark can become a little bit unsettled, and you can get a few thumps and bumps up through the tyres, through the suspension and into the cab. But it's not terrible though. When it comes to slow, technical off-roading, the Shark probably does a little bit better than what a lot of us would have expected because it has an all-wheel drive system. There's no four-wheel drive in this vehicle, no low-range gearing, no drive shaft, and it relies on off-road traction control to keep the vehicle moving safely and under control on the track. And while that system is not perfect, it certainly could be a little bit better calibrated. It works pretty damn well though. The key is to get your tyre pressures right, and the tyres on this vehicle as standard aren't up to scratch. So get your tyre pressures right on the right tyres, maybe a decent set of all-terrains or mud terrains, and you'll make what is an adequate all-wheel drive vehicle a whole lot better. It could also do with a suspension lift because the Shark is quite low, and you realise that pretty quickly. It's got about 230 mil of ground clearance. Wading depth is listed as about 700 mil. Off-road angles, approach, departure and ramp over are pretty shallow, so you do have to drive the Shark with a lot of care and consideration to avoid any damage or any strife. But that's absolutely fine because that's what this vehicle is designed for. It's not a rock crawling beast. It's not a hardcore remote area touring vehicle. It's simply a more than capable off-roader that, if driven within the parameters of what it can actually do, light to moderate off-roading, then the Shark is perfectly capable and perfectly comfortable in those scenarios. It doesn't have a lot of wheel travel because you've got double wishbone and core spring suspension at each corner. There's no live axle moving fully up and down on this vehicle. And there is a bit of a disconnect between the enormous amount of torque that this vehicle is capable of producing, but getting that torque to the dirt, through the tyres, down to the surface that you're driving on, there it just feels a bit patchy, and that's where that off-road traction control system can be better calibrated to suit the kind of terrain you're going to be driving on. And while it is a bit disconcerting to drive the Shark off-road at first because there's no revving engine when you put the throttle down, you can still feel the tyres on the dirt. There's plenty of connection between the driver and the terrain. There's just that tiny bit of electronic disconnect between the driver and the terrain, and it's just something you've got to get used to. And that's something that I've also experienced in vehicles like the new Defender and those that really rely on electronic traction control systems rather than good old-fashioned old-school four-wheel drive mechanicals, diff lockers, low-range gearing, all that sort of boring but very effective stuff. The Shark does have decent steel bash plates on the underbody, but what concerns me is that the battery pack is about midway along the undercarriage of the Shark, and that's where you've got that shallow ramp over angle. And while it is protected by a bash plate and a little bit of foam sandwiched in between it and the bash plate, that seems vulnerable to damage to me, especially if you're trying to tackle rock steps, even innocuous rock steps. You just wouldn't want to give that battery a decent bump because then you might be in a bit of strife. Apart from that, the Shark ticks all of the boxes in terms of off-road effectiveness. It just, again, needs to be driven within its parameters in that sort of range that it's comfortable in. If you are considering the Shark as a touring vehicle, it's handy to know that its unbraked towing capacity is 750 kilograms and its brake towing capacity is below industry standard for a dual cab ute at 2,500 kilograms, but perfectly fine for this kind of mid-sized ute. Payload is listed as 790 kilograms, and that's a little bit shy of what some other dual cab utes are able to carry, and you want to always keep those figures in mind: gross vehicle mass, payload. All of those numbers come in handy when you're trying to figure out how much you can legally carry on board your vehicle. So always keep those in mind, so then you stay safe and you stay legal. The all-wheel drive system on board the Shark does work well, but it's better if you think about it almost like a Subaru all-wheel drive system rather than a four-wheel drive system, because that is how it tends to operate. And until something is done to the software, recalibrated, or there's some kind of approximation in that software that can work like a diff lock, front or rear, both preferably, then the Shark is going to be limited to how much it can actually tackle in terms of off-roading. The Shark's official fuel consumption is listed as 2 litres per 100 kilometres, and it has a combined driving range, petrol and electric, of 800 kilometres. The Shark has a 60 litre fuel tank, and I reckon from my results on this test you could reasonably expect a driving range combined, that's petrol and electric, of about 700 kilometres. The Shark has the maximum 5-star ANCAP safety rating, and that's from testing in early 2025. Driver assist tech includes AEB adaptive cruise control, lane keep assist, a 360-degree camera and more. For even more details, make sure you read my full written review at carsguide.com.au. All new Sharks are covered by BYD's 6-year, 150,000 kilometre warranty. The battery pack and the drive unit are covered by an 8-year, 160,000 kilometre warranty. After the first servicing appointment, which comes at no extra cost at 6 months, servicing is then scheduled for every 6 months or 20,000 kilometres, and prices for each of those appointments vary, so make sure you check with your dealer about those. The BYD Shark 6 marks a massive step forward for the plug-in electric hybrid ute market in terms of quality, comfort and all-round drivability. It really is impressive on road. It's quiet, refined and comfortable, and it's capable off-road of maybe a little bit more than what you might expect of it, but as long as it's used well within its parameters. There are some trade-offs though in terms of payload and towing capacity, but overall the BYD Shark 6 is very impressive. But what do you reckon? Have your say in the comments section below. And as always, make sure you read my full written review at carsguide.com.au.